Welcome. Settle yourself in, perhaps adjusting your pillow or blanket, and allow your breathing to become slow and steady. Tonight, we are going to travel back to 19th century London, a city at the height of the Industrial Revolution. Imagine it. The air heavy with coal smoke, the streets crowded with carriages, costermongers and factory chimneys, and the slow glow of gas lamps stretching out into the fog. But instead of lingering in the grand drawing rooms of the wealthy, or the bustling halls of Parliament, tonight we are stepping into a much quieter corner of history, one that is overlooked, often forgotten, and yet deeply human. We will be exploring the lives of match factory workers, those who toiled day after day producing the simple wooden matches that illuminated homes, lit fires for cooking, and kindled the lamps of London. It was difficult work, dangerous even. And yet, for thousands of men, women, and children, it was the only option available. So let us begin. Imagine yourself stepping quietly into a factory on the East End of London. In the year 1870, the first thing you notice is the air. It is thick, faintly acrid, tinged with a sharpness that catches in your throat. This is the smell of phosphorus white phosphoruson, essential ingredient in the matches of the day. The building itself is long and low, with high windows that let in a pale, grayish light. The floors are wooden, worn smooth by the constant shuffle of boots and clogs. Everything is covered in a thin dusting of powder yellowish in places, white in others. The workers wipe their hands on their aprons, but the substance clings stubbornly, seeping into skin and fabric alike. Now, imagine yourself among them. Rows of young women sit at benches, their backs slightly bent, dipping small wooden splints into a mixture. Each match must be coated evenly, then set to dry on racks. They move steadily, their hands swift and practiced, but there is no rush, no chatter. Conversation is limited. The overseers prefer it that way. The soundscape is simple. The scrape of wood, the clink of trays, and the faint coughing that echoes now and again through the room. Many of the workers are girls, some barely into their teens. Their wages are small, just a few shillings a week, but their families depend on it. You might imagine one of them, her apron tied neatly, hair pinned back, her face pale beneath the film of powder. She focuses intently, because if she makes an error, if too much phosphorus clings to a match, there could be sparks, or worse, a fire. The hours stretched long, 12, sometimes 14 in a day. There's little pause. Only a brief break when they step outside into the soot-laden air for a piece of bread or a sip of water. The rhythm of their lives is dictated not by the clock on the wall, but by the endless repetition of dipping, drying, and packing. And there is always the risk. The white phosphorus that gives the matches their bright, easy ignition is also silently poisonous. It clings not only to their hands, but to their lungs and teeth. Slowly it works its way into the body, and after years of exposure, many develop a condition the workers grimly nicknamed Fossy Jaw. Their jaws swell, ache, and in the quiet of night, a dull pain grows unbearable. But inside the factory, little is said of this. The supervisors look away, and the workers too, often try to ignore it. To complain might mean dismissal, and dismissal would mean hunger at home. The workers form a kind of rhythm together. The benches, the dipping trays, the racks of drying matches, they create a strange harmony, almost hypnotic. As you listen, you might imagine the gentle rustle of wooden splints, the careful turning of trays, the faint scuff of boots across the floor. Over time, it becomes a steady lull, quiet pulse of industrial life. Beyond the benches, others pack the finished matches into small wooden boxes. The boxes themselves are rough, often leaving splinters in their hands. Each must be carefully aligned, tied in bundles, and stacked for transport. Your matches will travel far beyond this room into taverns and parlors, into kitchens and factories, into the homes of the very wealthy who never once think about the hands that shaped them. And still, the day continues, hour after hour. The light shifts outside the high windows, turning from gray to gold, then dimming again to dusk. Inside, however, the work hardly changes. The air grows thicker, the fatigue heavier, but the rhythm persists. When the factory bell finally rings, the workers shuffle out, tired and stiff. Some clutch their wages, wrapped in a small scrap of paper. Others carry nothing, their pay docked for mistakes or broken boxes. They walk home through narrow alleys and crowded streets. The glow of London's lamps, lit by the very matches they help to make, guiding them back to rooms that are small, shared, and dim. And so their days repeat, one into the next. The rhythm of their lives is not measured in joy or leisure, but in the endless cycle of production. Yet even within this difficult routine, there are small moments. The shared glance of recognition between workers, quick smile during a break, the comfort of routine itself. As you imagine this world, perhaps you feel yourself lulled by its slow pace, the steady labor, the quiet inevitability of it all. This was their life, not glamorous, not celebrated, just work. And now, having seen their daily existence, let us turn our attention to a more personal story. To one of the people who emerged from this world of dust and phosphorus to leave behind a trace we can still follow today. Let us narrow our focus now. We have seen the rhythm of daily life inside the match factory, the benches lined with workers, the dust of phosphorus settling like snow. But history does not only live in routines. Sometimes it stirs in moments of resistance, in the voices of those who chose to speak, even when speaking came at a cost. In the summer of 1888, in London's East End, such a moment arrived. The Bryant and Maymatch factory stood in Bow, an area crowded with narrow terraces, gasworks, and railway lines. It employed more than 1,000 workers, mostly women and girls, many no older than 14. Wages were meager, conditions harsh, and fines were imposed for even the smallest mistakes. A broken box, a late arrival, a dropped match. Imagine yourself standing at the factory gates on a July morning. A group of young women linger outside, their aprons still dusted with powder, their faces weary yet determined. They are refusing to step inside. Their voices are quiet, but their presence is firm. This was the beginning of what became known as the Match Girls' Strike. The strike began after the management dismissed one of the workers, reportedly as punishment for speaking to a journalist who had revealed the harsh realities inside the factory. Outraged, her fellow workers refused to return to their benches. It one by one, then in dozens, they walked out. For many, this was a bold and dangerous choice. There were no savings to fall back on, no safety net. A day without wages meant less bread on the table, less coal for the fire. And yet together, they found strength. The story of the strike spread quickly. Newspapers reported on the courage of the match girls and reformers, including the social activist Annie Besant, lent their voices in support. Besant herself had already written about the workers, describing the effects of phosphorus poisoning with a calm but cutting clarity. She did not use sensational words, but her accounts painted a portrait of slow suffering that could not be ignored. Picture the strike meetings held in small halls or crowded rooms, the air warm and close, lit by flickering gaslight. Young women spoke hesitantly at first, their voices soft, but then steadier as they realized they were not alone. They spoke of fines that reduced their already tiny wages, of the constant fear of dismissal, and of the pain that came to those who developed the swelling and aching of phosphorus poisoning. Despite their youth, many carried themselves with quiet dignity. It was unusual in 1888 for working-class women to be at the center of a labor movement, yet here they were, challenging their employers, and in doing so, forcing London to pay attention. The strike did not last long, just over 2 weeks, but its impact was significant. The management, under pressure from public opinion and fearful of disruption, agreed to concessions. Some of the harshest fines were abolished, and conditions saw gradual improvement. But perhaps more importantly, this strike revealed something powerful, that even among the poorest, even among young women long dismissed as powerless, solidarity could create change. As you imagine this moment, think of the contrast. The endless quiet of the factory, where each worker bent over her task in silence. And then, outside those same factory gates, the murmur of voices rising together. Not shouting, not chaotic, but steady. Like the rhythm of their labor transformed into a rhythm of defiance. In the broader sweep of history, the strike was small. Just a few weeks in the long story of industrial London, but for the workers themselves, it was a rare chance to be heard. A chance to step outside the dust and monotony of the factory floor and remind the world that they were human beings with dignity. And so, the Match Girls' strike of 1888 became a symbol. Not a grand revolution, not a bloody confrontation, but a quiet moment of collective courage. A reminder that even those at the very edges of power, those covered in phosphorus dust, those earning pennies could shift the balance, if only for a moment. Let your mind rest here for a while. With the quiet determination of these young women, their courage gentle but unwavering. And as their voices fade, we will turn now to another layer of the story. Beyond the strike, beyond even the daily routine, lie deeper mysteries. What has archaeology and cultural study uncovered about their lives, their homes, and their world? What traces remain long after the factories themselves fell silent? When we think of history, we often imagine grand buildings or famous names, kings, parliaments, monuments that still stand tall. But the story of the match factory workers lives in smaller traces, faint echoes left behind in the dust of London's East End. Imagine a narrow street in Bow, the kind that no longer exists today. Rows of brick houses, 2 stories high, their walls soot-darkened, their windows often cracked or patched with cloth. These were the homes of many match workers, modest, crowded, sometimes housing multiple families beneath a single roof. Archaeologists and social historians, in piecing together the lives of these workers, turn not to palaces or marble statues, but to the ordinary objects that remain. Clay pipes, fragments of pottery, children's marbles, old boots with worn-down soles. Each small thing whispers a part of the story. The match factories themselves left their mark, too. Excavations of old industrial sites reveal workbenches, trays, and waste pits where chemicals were discarded. In some places, the soil still carries faint traces of phosphorus compounds, long buried beneath modern development. The very earth, even after more than a century, holds on to the memory of the work once done there. There is a quiet mystery in these remnants. The workers themselves rarely left written records, few diaries, few letters. Their lives were not the kind considered worth recording at the time. And so much of what we know comes from the silence they left behind, interpreted through the scraps and shadows that remain. Consider the cultural weight of the match itself, a simple stick of wood tipped with phosphorus. Yet in the 19th century, it was transformative. Before the match, fire was coaxed with flint and tinder, a slow and uncertain process. With the match, a flame could be struck in an instant, at any time, by anyone. It brought light into dark rooms, warmth into cold kitchens, and convenience into households that had never known such ease. And yet this everyday miracle had its hidden cost. Each match was born from the aching fingers and poisoned lungs of workers who remained invisible. Society marveled at the convenience, but seldom questioned the hands that provided it. The object itself, small and disposable, mirrored the way the workers were seen necessary, but unvalued. There is also a certain irony in the symbolism of the match. A tool of fire, capable of sparking warmth, but also of destruction. In workers' songs and political cartoons of the time, matches sometimes appeared as metaphors. The spark of revolution, the light of justice. In this way, the humble product of the factory took on a cultural life far larger than the thin sticks in their paper boxes. Archaeologists have also uncovered evidence of illness, not in artifacts, but in records kept by hospitals and poorhouses. Descriptions of phosphorus necrosis appear again and again, jawbones eaten away. Patients marked by the disease that became infamous as phossy jaw. These clinical notes, written in detached, factual tones, serve as a haunting counterpart to the silence of the workers themselves. They remind us of the hidden toll behind the small objects that once sat on every mantelpiece and kitchen shelf. And so, a mystery lingers. How many lives were shortened? How many stories were never told? We can only piece together fragments. A broken plate, a bundle of pay slips, a row of cramped tenements marked on old maps. Together, they form a ghostly portrait, one that hovers just out of reach. Imagine yourself walking now through the modern East End, where glass towers and new housing developments rise. Beneath the pavement, beneath the traffic and the chatter of today, lies the memory of factories long gone. The workers themselves are gone, too, their voices silent, but the traces remain, quiet, persistent, waiting for those who look closely enough. There is comfort, perhaps, in knowing that even the smallest stories can be recovered. That the rhythm of the match factory, once thought lost, can still be felt through the objects and echoes that survive. And in that way, the workers are not entirely forgotten. As we let these mysteries settle, let us turn to our final reflection. What was life like? Not for the workers themselves, but for those who lived just a short carriage ride away, the wealthy elite of London, who struck matches without ever thinking of the hands that made them. What contrast can we see between the dim factory floor and the glittering drawing rooms of the 19th century? Let us step away from the dim air of the East End factories for a moment and into the warm glow of an elegant London townhouse. Here in the West End, the world feels entirely different. The windows are large and clear, the curtains heavy with velvet, the tables polished to a shine. The scent in the air is not phosphorus and coal smoke, but beeswax and rosewater. Candles flicker in chandeliers, though increasingly they are being replaced by gas lamps. It's still on mantelpieces and in kitchen drawers. Matches are kept ready to light a fire in the hearth, or a cigar after dinner. For the wealthy families of London, a box of matches was an afterthought. Small, cheap, easy to replace. A servant might be instructed to fetch one, to light the grate in the drawing room, or to strike a flame for the lamp. The delicate scratch of wood on sandpaper, followed by the quick bloom of fire, was a sound so ordinary that it hardly registered. And yet every one of those small flames carried with it the hidden labor of the East End, the quiet rhythm of dipping and drying, the coughing in the factory air, the pale faces of girls who earn pennies to create them. The contrast is striking. In Bow, workers rose before dawn, walking through fog and soot to their benches. In Mayfair or Bloomsbury, the wealthy awoke to tea served in porcelain cups, fires already burning brightly in their hearths. The rhythm of life was not measured in long hours of repetitive labor, but in appointments, visits, and leisure. The match itself, so cheap, it was often considered disposable, represented this divide. For the poor, matches were both a necessity and, at times, a small luxury. A family might ration them carefully, using only a few each day. For the rich, they were abundant, their costs barely noticed, their presence taken for granted. Imagine a dinner party in 1880. Guests arrive in carriages, their clothes rich with silks and lace. The dining table glitters with silver and crystal. A servant leans in quietly to light the candles one after another, using a match produced in a factory only a few miles away. In that moment, the world of the East End and the West End meet, though no one at the table thinks of it. For those seated in luxury, the match is only a tool, a fleeting spark. For the worker who dipped it, it may have cost her health. There is an irony here. The wealth of London in the 19th century rested on the labor of its poorest residents, and yet the two worlds rarely touched. A lady might pass a factory girl in the street, one dressed in finery, the other in a simple apron. Their eyes might meet for an instant, but their lives moved in opposite directions, never truly intersecting. This contrast was not limited to matches, of course. It was the pattern of industrial London itself. Factories in the East End supplied the comforts of the West. Workers' lives were measured in exhaustion and risk, while the lives of the privileged flowed with ease.